gently stroke it a couple of times.
Hey, my name's Adam. Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, it's the second part in a series about maintaining the intake track on an Audi B8 S4. This area is not only prone to carbon buildup, but many of the components under there can fail because the supercharger sits directly on top and things can get a little bit toasty. So in the last video, we went as far as removing the supercharger, we replaced the PCV valve, the water pump and the thermostat, and right at the end you saw me remove those injectors. Now I learned a very valuable and expensive lesson about how to remove the injectors themselves. Short, straight taps up. Any more and you can actually break the top of the injector. Just ask me how I know. So with the injectors out of the way, check out what I found.
Oh! Look at this! This is why you don't buy New Jersey cars. Got to clean all that out now and hope none of it got in the piston.
It's like this car was driven to the beach on a daily basis. So with the injectors out of the way, it's really important to clean around that area. I actually ended up pressurizing the cylinders to make sure that no other sand got into that combustion chamber. Let's go and take a look. What I'm doing is making sure that no sand gets into the cylinder by pressurizing the cylinder itself. This is just a cylinder leakage tester. Doesn't matter if the valves are open or closed. In this case they are closed, but I've got some tape over the top. So I've been turning it up to about 30, and then I'll show you what I'm doing over here. All I'm doing is taking a paper towel, twisting it, covering it with grease. Idea being, if there is any sand, it should get caught by the grease rather than going in the cylinders. So this was actually the cleanest out of all of the cylinders. Hear the pressure. As I scrape and get all the sand out, right now, pull out the plug and gently just take a cotton swab. But that's pretty good. While I'm cleaning the rest, I'll plug this up and I'll show you on the next one because it will have a bit more pressure. In case you've never used one of these before, take the spark plug out. Now when I took the coil pack out, I did actually spray air at like 100-150 psi in and around the spark plug to get rid of all the sand and stuff that might have accumulated in there. Take this part of the kit, and in this case this is an M14. Slide it down into there. When you start twisting, it should just thread on nicely. And you do this, and because of the rubber gasket, you can literally just twist it by hand, and that's tight enough to apply some pressure. So about 30 psi. New plug in. And then to remove, you just simply disconnect, unscrew, because it's only hand tight, it'll come straight out. Pop the spark plug in. Spark plug wrench without the rubber boot. I'll worry about torquing those later when I replace them. So now the injector holes are cleaned themselves, we need to go ahead and take care of the injectors. So I'm reusing 4 of the original injectors. I do have 2 new ones, more about that in a minute. Most people don't. Most people actually wouldn't reuse the old injectors, but I've always, especially with racing, gone ahead and actually cleaned the injectors and flow tested them. Now, the reason why I didn't actually end up going for all new injectors, we'll find out towards the end of the video when I get them on that rig, and it wasn't what I expected. All right, the first test, injectors 1 and 2 are the new ones, and you can see that even those are slightly imbalanced. So stay tuned and you might have some information on that. But for now, let's go ahead and reseal these old injectors with this special tool, and I'll show you all about it. Okay, so we're at the point where everything can start going back together. We need to get the injectors back in, we need to clean out the cylinders, clean out the intakes, and then start reassembly. In order to do that, I need to get the separator plates that go in the intake soaked and cleaned up. So here I'm trying a couple of different things. I'm actually trying an intake cleaner here, and then in this one I'm trying odorless mineral spirits. Reason being is one smelled very much like the other, so I'll wait and see how well they do. Before the injectors can go back in, they need to be rebuilt and resealed. So we've got some seal kits up there. These are the 2 new injectors, so they'll be fine as is, although I did have to borrow these parts from the 2 old ones that were broken. The first thing to do is to actually remove this, and I'll show you that in a second. So this is that lower combustion seal. You can see it there, so I'm going to demo it on this one before doing these. And then I need to replace the top seal. So you basically get a spacer and the actual O-ring itself, and that all comes as part of the kit. On this one, you can see how crusty they were, right? So they have cleaned up a lot, but look at this. So this is the condition in the cylinder, and you can see all that sand just above that seal. It really didn't look good. Key here is to actually cut this seal with a very sharp knife. So this is a brand new blade, and I'm just going to gently stroke it a couple of times. Don't have to apply much pressure, and you don't want to mark the metal. You'll feel it when it goes through. Just a couple of strokes. There you go. So basically from there, and this, you can see how bad this old seal was, it's just flaking off. That's ready for the new seal. One thing to note is the shape of the actual cavity itself. You can see that it's slightly bulging in the middle. So when you cut the old one off, just be very careful of that. Give the injectors a wipe down. Now in the kit, you basically get the spacer for the O-ring at the top, and then the actual combustion seal itself. So this is what we're going to use first. So taking the special tool out of the CTA kit, which is 8877, the idea is it slides down onto the end. It's pretty tough, you just have to take your time. Okay, and then when it approaches to the end, take the injector, effectively use that to get it onto the injector. There. Then it's into the recess, but can you see where it's been stretched? So now I need to take the other tool, and this is actually the G one, so this is 8.1 to 8.5. I'm going to start there. The idea is to basically push it forward whilst turning ever so slightly. They recommend 180 degrees in the workshop manual, and then to remove it, you turn back. Then this is the one that gets a little bit tighter, so this is F. Again, the same thing. Turn it 180 degrees until it's fully seated, and then as you come off, turn it back the other way, and that should be seated. Then with the others, just rinse and repeat. So over time, those seals do relax as well. So what I'm going to do is just do all the seals first before pushing them down. And then to finish prepping them, the 2 seals at the top will be replaced. And even though the spacer on this is likely not damaged, I'm going to replace it anyway. There. Just get this started. Done. So one thing to note is this here, this spacer has actually got some mold markings, and I'm making sure they're going down to the bottom. It shouldn't matter. I don't think this is actually a sealing surface. Well, it can't be with the split. I just don't like having those against the rubber. Sure, it doesn't make a difference. Now the last thing to do is actually the seal that just goes here. So this is 2 rings, and they've got basically a shelf and a cup, so you can see where it's tapered there, and again that taper there. That taper goes up this way, and from there there's a small split ring, just goes over the injector, pushes into that recess.
And there are 6 injectors ready to go back in. One thing to note is there is actually a unique serial number here. So that top line is unique per injector. 1 and 2 are the ones that are being replaced. It looks like there was a revision of the injector. So these are 206E036G and these are 306E036AL. Hopefully they're the same things. They look identical. That's basically when I put that part number in. This is what came up. They're both continental. So fingers crossed.
So there you go. So you saw in the previous video how crusty they were. Well, they actually cleaned up really well and I managed to get them resealed. So more on the sealing right at the end. The next step as you do this process is to actually get these on like a flow bench. So we want to do ultrasonic cleaning. That will actually clean it internally, but also measure how well they flow at the correct pressure and voltage. Now, I've always wanted to do it myself. I've generally sent out injectors to other people to get done, and I ended up buying a couple of different devices, although I'll only show you one, on Amazon, and I'll leave it up to you whether or not you think it's worth doing. So yeah, I managed to get some results, which is great, and I'll show you all that, but I'll let you decide if it's worth doing yourself, especially for these high voltage ones. High voltage, high pressure. Anyway, let's go and check it out. So this is just a first baseline test where I'm running the 4 original injectors in the machine to see how they've been performing in the car. So this will give me a baseline not only to compare to the new injectors, but also once I've cleaned the injectors, we should see a difference between before and after, so when they're flowing better, fingers crossed. You probably noticed, but injector 6 did not look happy, so that's the one at the end, and sure enough, here are the results. There is a 10% difference across the board here, which is not good. It's never good to take a sample of one, so I ran the test again. You can see here, injector 6 is not running very well, but it gave the same results. Time to test all the injectors to see if it's any different. Alright, the first test. Injectors 1 and 2 are the new ones, and you can see that even those are slightly imbalanced. So it's either the tester or the injectors. So I'm going to run the test a couple of times, but this one is the worrying one, number 6. So keep an eye on that one. This is where the results start to get a little bit inconsistent. So not only has number 6 actually failed, so it's no longer running, but check out that pressure bouncing around all over the place. This happened time and time again, so I moved on to actually cleaning the injectors to see if it would help. We're on mode number 1, cleaning, 10 minutes. And there they all are, merrily just being ultrasonically cleaned. Alright, I've muted that horrible audio, sorry about that. I probably should know better than trying to record an ultrasonic cleaning. I did a quick zoom in of what you actually see, and what you're observing here is a couple of things. You can see some particles of dirt, but you can also actually see the testing fluid come out of the injectors. So the cleaning versus the testing fluid is actually different, and that's a good thing in this case because I could see it and demonstrate. So this is a leak test of the freshly cleaned 1, 2 and 6. Long story about that in a minute, but this is at 70 psi, and as you can see, we're not seeing what I saw before, which was a slight drip on 6. My bad on that one. So I did actually do a leak test before I cleaned the injectors. I didn't record it because I was getting so frustrated with the machine, but just trust me, there was a minor leak on 6, which again is not good. This is 6 basically, which is good. So I'll let that run for another 18 seconds. It's been running for 40 already, and then we'll run another test. With that done, same pressure, idea is 70. I'm going to run test 3, medium speed test, for 5 minutes with just 3 cylinders. And it's just because I'm not getting consistency with 6 with the pressure, and there's other issues. So we'll see if this works. It looks like it needs a slight increase in pressure, but it's much more stable now, as you can see. And the spray pattern looks pretty good. But we're just going to see which cylinder is going to perform the best. We want them all equal, or as close to equal as possible. So this is terrifying if it's real, but I don't believe it's real. So I'm going to actually run that test again with the same settings. It should generate the same result. If it does, I'm going to change something, probably which injector is connected where, and rerun it. But this is frustrating because this is nothing like I saw earlier. I've got a funny feeling I know why, but we'll see. Still not good. Now, the one thing I have realized is I've been running the medium speed test, but there's also this medium speed spray value test. So I'm gonna try that.
This will do it 1,000 times, I understand. Let's clear that out first. Now there is something else I'll show you in a second. Give it a go. Not very helpful at all, but at least it's consistent with which levels where. Okay, so that was 2,000 times, and as you can see, very similar results that we've been having. So what I'm going to do now is actually switch the two end ones around to see if it follows the actual connector itself. Okay, so this is closer, but the one on the left, as you can see, is still a little bit higher. So I'm now going to move this injector across here to see if it's actually something to do with the distribution of the fluid. Now the fact that I'm running 3 and they're at different ends is really where I think there might be a problem. So that time it followed the injector, which is a little bit worrying because that means that injector is flowing that much better than the others. So, I think I'm going to go down to 2 and see what happens. Control test number 1, mode 9, medium speed spray value test, 3,000 cycles. Injector 1 is on the left, injector 2 is on the right. This cable is 2, this is 1. Everything should be consistent, so let's give it a go. 70 volts. Forgot to say, 40 PSI, so I'm going to leave it on, running at this for every test. I know it's lower than the 70 that the car actually generates, but I didn't want that to be able to cause an influence, so I didn't want that getting behind, so when it bounces, it means that pressure's not consistent. So you can see injector 1 consistently flows more than injector 2. Now in this case it's what, in the order of almost 5%, I would guess, but it's close. So I'm actually going to run it at 70 now, just because I want to do everything like it would be in the car. Here it is. So it looks like 66 and 63 milliliters for injectors 1 and 2. So now to do all the rest with the exact same settings and see what they come out as. So here we have injectors 3 and 4. Let's go. Well, this isn't exactly what I hoped for. So this is 3 and 4, and you can see that 3 is right around the 67 and 4 is around the 68. So they're actually flowing better than the new ones. Wah, wah, wah. All right, last 2, 5 and 6. Here we go. Try that again. I forgot to close the latch there. That would never be good. So 6 is still the lowest at 60, with 5 being about 65, 64, 65. Huge variation. Repeating with 1 and 2. Second round of 1 and 2, 66 and 63. Okay, we've got some consistency at last.
So definitely not what I expected. Now, I've run 12 volt injectors on this machine and it worked absolutely fine. The problem is when you're talking about the pressure that we're running and the voltage, both of these things, we're pushing that machine to its limit. So you saw between 2 injectors and 6 injectors, it did not give the same results. Now I'm super happy I managed to get consistent results just running 2 injectors. That basically meant that the pressure fluctuation wasn't fluctuating enough to throw off the results. And also, at least it was consistent from run to run. So I got consistent results, but the problem was the injectors were still flowing at different rates. Now the only thing I can assume, because I've got the 2 control brand new injectors from Audi, is that the Audi ECU is able to provide the offsets and trim, you know, per cylinder. Haven't confirmed that. If you know, comment below. If not, it's a bit terrifying considering where those different cylinders were at. But it seemed to be running fine and it's done 115,000 miles, so who knows? But yeah, either that engine is really robust or yeah, the ECU is independently trimming the cylinders, which is what I suspect. Okay, so we've got that out of the way. The machine did get returned. So I tried it. For me, you know, for the money, it's just not worth it. I want to try another one in the future, so I will end up going back to it to see if I can get one that works. And if I can't, I'm actually going to modify it. So after I sent it back, I actually came up with a couple of ideas on what I could do to actually create my own pressure rig, because that's really the key. You want that pressure not only to be controlled fully, but also to be consistent and not fluctuating like that. So that's the biggest area. And then also I want to measure on an oscilloscope the actual individual banks to make sure that they are correct when it comes to the timing. So probably do that in the future, but not now. I haven't got time, there's too much else going on. So now that's all done, we can actually throw these back in the cylinder. So I'll show you how to install these injectors. And again, I found something else as I did it. So learning along the way, which is great.
And to put the injectors back in, simply a case of they need to go and dry, finding the sweet spot, and pushing. Should just go all the way in. So just realised this, almost made a massive mistake. One thing you'll notice is this is the new injector, and it is actually a different height from there to there. So if you get really close, hopefully you can see that difference. Basically the height is different, and that's because this is not actually used for this type of injector, these seals here. What's actually used for the new ones is this. So I'm glad I didn't get as far as reassembling the engine, because that would have been a bit of a nightmare. I actually noticed, because I used the bore scope, and you can see here that the injector wasn't sat all the way flush with the cylinder, or at least inside the cylinder itself. So yeah, noticing that made me go and research and look and realise it was a different clip. So I need to switch that over. And it simply goes up there and clicks in. And then basically this distance here is basically where it's supported in the cylinder, so it's actually down at this point rather than these which seal up here. I did actually measure the top once the injectors were in to actually make sure that this part was flush, because that then meant the bottom was flush with the internal cylinder wall.
So there you have it. I'm so happy that I managed to catch that before I actually went and fired up the engine and drove it and raced it on track, because that might have been a nightmare. I can't imagine having that additional sort of volume inside the chamber is actually going to do anything good. And you've also got that sharp edge there, which could be a hot spot. I don't know, but probably not good. Let me know if you've ever run it like that, or you think you might have and got away with it, because maybe you don't have to worry. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to learn from my lessons so you don't have to make them. And of course, like, share and subscribe, but most importantly, thanks for watching and have a great day.